I want to welcome our buddy Senator Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz, how are you, my friend?
Mark, I'm doing terrific. How are you doing?
Let me look. I'm great, thank you. All right. Couple of questions, Ted. Let's keep the answers short, because I'm going to ask you some questions that require longer answers, all right? You were involved in Bush versus Gore, or no?
I was.
A lot of great lawyers were involved in that, weren't they?
It was an incredible team. I think it's actually probably the best litigation team that's ever come together in any case. It was breathtaking. I was a baby lawyer. I got to carry their bags.
So ultimately, there's a filing with the U.S. Supreme Court called an emergency appeal, correct?
There is.
Well, there's really no such thing as an emergency appeal, but the court took it as a writ of certiorari, correct?
Yep.
A lot of people said the court's not going to take this case. I mean, you're asking for relief. You're literally asking the Supreme Court to stop the vote count, to stop the Florida Supreme Court, and put an end to this. Remember all that?
I remember it well.
That's extraordinary relief, isn't it?
It was.
Did it ever happen before in American history?
Not in any context remotely comparable.
Okay. So we have a case now. We're in the middle of a campaign, time to be in the middle of a campaign, a completely phony case built on phony state law that requires the use of a federal law, a campaign law that is never defined, in which the 5th and 14th Amendment due process and equal protection rights of the candidate are denied. In order to effect the presidential election, which is a national election, and every other state and every other citizen and voter of every other state in the lowest trial court in Manhattan, a judge and a prosecutor, creating a precedent that will allow it to happen again and again and again and again. Don't you think?
Absolutely.
So why the hell did I get so much resistance when I said we need to figure out a way to get this to the Supreme Court? If they choose not to take it, that's up to them.
Yep.
But we do have a couple of ways, original jurisdictions, if the state sue New York. Another way, a common law writ, not used often, extraordinary circumstance. Can you think of a more extraordinary circumstance than this?
Look, it is extraordinary and it is unprecedented. I think it is the greatest assault on rule of law we've seen in modern times, and it is also the most egregious election interference our country's ever seen.
So we can't predict in advance what any court will do, can we, Ted Cruz?
We cannot.
But we can predict this. If we do nothing, it'll do nothing, correct?
Yep. Yep.
So the court requires a petitioner, right?
They do.
And if you don't petition, well, they move on, don't they?
They will not reach out and take it on their own. They will only respond to a litigant.
Oh, you're coming in and out. You're coming in and out.
They will
only
not reach
respond
out.
to. Go ahead.
They'll only respond to a litigant bringing it before them. The court doesn't reach out and take anything. It only responds to what's filed in front of it.
Is it so frivolous if one state sues another to seek original jurisdiction on such incredibly important constitutional questions? Is it frivolous if a president of the United States, a former president who's a candidate, given what took place in that Manhattan courtroom, says, look, is there any way, well, we have these writs, you may want to try one of those. And he says, well, let's try it. Is that frivolous?
Absolutely not. I will say I think the court would be pretty skeptical of one state suing another in this context.
Well, what if five states sue another?
I think the only avenue that would have a prayer of the court taking it would be if Trump tried to file an extraordinary writ. And I think there's a chance they would take it. I actually discussed this at great length. I spent about an hour going into these issues on today's podcast, Verdict with Ted Cruz. You've talked about this publicly, and I lay out, I go into number one, why this trial was objectively lawless, and in particular, I broke down the jury instructions, which the jury instructions were the most one-sided, egregious instructions I have ever seen. The judge knows this will be reversed. I put the odds of this being reversed on appeal at 100.0%. But here's what this partisan judge is gambling. He's gambling that the appeal will take months or years, and it'll be after Election Day. This is not about law. This is about politics. The only way to change that is if the Trump team files an extraordinary writ. Now, I think it's probably more likely than not the court wouldn't take it, but I think it's not remotely frivolous, and I think they might take it.
Is there an alternative? No.
The alternative is appealing through the New York state courts, which, as you know, would take years, and then seeking certiorari, appealing to the U.S. Supreme Court.
But what I mean is that in terms of the nation, in terms of the election,
between now and
they will have succeeded because the appeals in New York, if we're right, are really irrelevant to the election of the American people in the other states. Really, I mean, and not only that, you're conferring extraordinary power, sitting back and allowing one state's appellate system in a blue state to make a decision after the fact.
Well, and I will say that the justice system in New York State is right now a global laughingstock. I'll confess, I wasn't surprised at the outcome, that it was a conviction, but I was disappointed. I held out hope that there would be just one juror out of 12, one that would say, hell no, this is a circus, I will not participate. And there weren't 12 angry men. There wasn't even one angry man. They were all willing to rubber stamp this ridiculous political persecution.
Now, that's right. And you know what? You know why I don't blame the jury, Ted Cruz? Because there shouldn't have been a jury.
That's true. And I will say, even, I'll give a little more defense for the jury. Given the instructions the judge gave them, if they actually follow the instructions, it was almost impossible not to convict because, as you know, the claims are false bookkeeping, but that's a misdemeanor. The statute of limitations had expired. And in order to get the case to go forward, they had to allege the false bookkeeping was in furtherance of another crime. And what the judge said, bizarrely, is the jury didn't have to decide what that other crime was.
All right. We're here with Senator Ted Cruz. Senator Ted Cruz, tell us how your campaign's going, because I see something very interesting. I see media rallying to Larry Hogan, who, you don't need to comment on this, who put out kind of a knucklehead statement on this case, and so is at odds with a number of conservatives, especially those in Maryland. And yet, I don't hear this media talking about your campaign, which is neck and neck. They're pouring tens of millions of dollars trying to defeat you. And I mean, I asked my fellow conservatives, which race is more important, Maryland or Texas? I'm quite serious about this. Don't you find that weird?
Well, look, the media is all in with the left wing of the Democrat Party. And Chuck Schumer's been very explicit. I'm his number one target in the country. Barack Obama has been explicit. He's told Democrats, go after Texas. George Soros is already flooding millions into Texas, into my race, trying to beat me. And my opponent, a very left-wing Democrat, is raising tens of millions. He is right now on TV across the state. He's spending millions on TV. You know how much TV I have? Zero. Right now, if you turn on your TV in Houston or San Antonio or South Texas, you see every other ad as a commercial for my opponent. And the reason is he has so much money, they can afford to do that. I'm raising money, but last time around, I was outspent 3-1, and the media is fully in bed. My opponent doesn't take hard media questions. He sits in his basement just like Joe Biden, and he's just trying to buy the race, and the media is doing everything they can to help him.
And by the way, people want to help you. Where do they go?
So our website is tedcruz.org, tedcruz.org. And I got to say, Mark, every time I go on, the patriots listening to your show, they go to tedcruz.org. They give $25 or $50 or $100, and it is an incredible. It is how we stand up to Schumer and Soros's millions. It is the incredible generosity. And I'll tell you what is hugely impactful is people that go to tedcruz.org and they sign up for a recurring monthly contribution. We call that our Liberty Circle. And the value of it is in a campaign, if you know what revenue is coming next month, you can allocate it. You can allocate the resources to fight back. The Democrats are going to spend between 100 and 150 million trying to beat me this cycle. They're coming after me with everything they got, and it's simply, it is patriots who love freedom and the Constitution going to tedcruz.org and making contributions. That's how we're able to fight back.
I know, but it just amazes me, and you don't need to get involved in this, that obviously for my listeners and for constitutional conservatives all over the country, the race in Texas is far more important than the race in Maryland. I'm not saying we give up on Maryland, but you have a Mitt Romney effectively running in Maryland, and you have a solid conservative running in Texas, and I see all the attention is paid on the Mitt Romney type in Maryland and almost none on you. It's very frustrating to, I think, millions and millions of listeners of this program. Now, you were involved. It's an issue I don't really know what's going on out there much, and that's to my detriment and my fault. In vitro, IVF.
Yeah.
What's the big issue there? You've been working on this.
So I have. In vitro fertilization.
I can't even pronounce it.
It's the process millions of parents have used to become parents, and it's the technology that enables them, parents who are struggling with infertility but desperately want to be a mom or dad. It is medical technology that enables them to do so. Right now, today, this is an amazing statistic, Mark. Over 2% of the births in America every year come from IVF, and so it has been an avenue for life. There are over 8 million babies that have been born through IVF. And what the Democrats are doing is they're trying very, very hard to scare parents and to scare prospective parents and to convince them the big bad Republicans are trying to take away IVF. And they're doing this because they don't want to defend their extreme position on abortion, so they want to shift it instead to IVF, which is incredibly popular because it is so helpful to parents that want to bring a child into the world. And so what I've done, if you look at the issue, the Democrats' threat that it's going to be taken away is a bogus threat. In the Senate, literally all 100 senators support IVF. I do not know a single senator who does not support IVF. And so what I did is I went to Katie Britt, senator from Alabama, and I said, listen, why don't you and I come together and write clear, simple legislation that protects IVF, that puts an ironclad protection into federal law so that parents don't have to be afraid, they don't have to be confused. And part of the reason it's so relevant is the Democrats are intending to spend millions and millions of dollars scaring people and telling people IVF is in jeopardy. And so I want to make clear, if we all agree it should be protected, let's stand together and let's protect it.
Mm-hmm. I love the way they say that they just want to codify Roe. They don't want to codify Roe. They want to codify, something that is so extreme, so radical, that the vast majority of Americans would oppose it. They want a national abortion law where parents are not informed about minors getting abortions, where all state regulations are eliminated, and on and on and on, right? I mean, they're not even in the realm of Roe v. Wade. That's how extreme they are.
You're exactly right. The Democrats' position on abortion is radical and extreme. Every single Senate Democrat, and also Colin Allred, who is my Democrat opponent, they have all voted for federal legislation that would strike down every single reasonable restriction in the country on abortion. It would just remove all of them. So it removes parental consent, it removes parental notification, and it legalizes abortion literally up until the moment of birth. In the 39th and 40th week of pregnancy, that is objectively, that is a radical and extreme position. And you mentioned a very small percentage of Americans support it. It's actually about 9% of Americans. That means 91% of Americans, they look at that and say, hey, that's too far. I don't support that. Amazingly, Mark, if you look just at Americans who consider themselves pro-choice, a majority of pro-choice Americans don't support unlimited abortion on demand up till the moment of birth. That is the position of every Democrat. And so they recognize, wait a second, our substantive position is really unpopular because it's so extreme. So let's not talk about it. Let's talk instead about IVF. which is really popular with the American people, and let's wrongly suggest the Republicans want to take it away. And the other thing they talk about is contraception, which, again, is a completely made-up issue. Contraception is legal and protected in every state of the union. It will be forever. There is not a single senator that wants to take it away. And, in fact, I've long been a vocal proponent of making it easier for women to access birth control.
Well, I would take it away from Chuck Schumer. I'll be perfectly honest with you. Anyway.
You know what? We're safe on that front. I would say he has a natural protection in that regard. He does.
You're not kidding. Ted Cruz, we love you here on the Mark Levin Show. God bless you, my friend. And we will post
Thank
that
you, Mark.
site.
God bless.
You take care of yourself.
TedCruz.org. TedCruz.org. Thank you, Mark.
You got it. We'll post that on our site, America. Oh, yeah. Isn't he great, by the way? He is a great senator. Constitutional lawyer. And you look at him where he stands on economics and so on. Ted Cruz is like the quintessential example, in my view, of what a constitutional conservative, a constitutional senator should be. Now, there's a few others, too, don't get me wrong, but we can't afford to lose him. While they're all crying in Washington, D.C., the establishment Republicans and their media about Larry Hogan. If you and I wake up after Election Day and he loses, so be it. If Cruz loses, that's a gut punch, don't you think, Mr. Producer? That's the difference. And we don't want to swap Hogan for Cruz. In other words, Hogan wins and Cruz loses. That is a disaster.